reported anti-East Asian racism incidents in Canada took place in Toronto since the beginning of the pandemic. This is not only unacceptable, but it's wrong. It's absolutely 100% wrong. There can be no excuse for this kind of behavior. This isn't the Toronto that we all know and that we all pride ourselves on being a part of. So to bring attention to the increasing rates of racist incidents against the East Asian communities and to make a commitment to bring an end to it, the city partnered with the Chinese Canadian National Council for Social Justice and a coalition of community partners to develop a social media campaign under our Toronto for All initiative. And the Toronto for All initiative has been going on for some time now, but it has really been aimed at bursting and wiping out stereotypes that exist and wiping out stigmas that are attached to certain peoples or certain communities in our city. And I think the campaign has proven to be very effective at raising awareness of some of these stereotypes and stigmas that are attached to different communities and really taking on head on in a very forthright way the issue of racism and the issue of stereotyping. It also challenges Torontonians to reflect on how they might be consciously or unconsciously participating in anti-East Asian racism and encourage them to speak up to prevent racism of any kind whenever they see it. You know, I was listening to a radio station the other day and I heard somebody come on and talk about an incident that they'd been part of in Algonquin Park, and they made a derogatory reference to Chinese people in general and saying, you know, it's Chinese people, you know. And that was an example right then and there of somebody who I have no idea what their motive was. I have no idea what was in their head, but it certainly was something where when you listened to it, you knew that they were stereotyping Chinese Canadians. And this is something that we have to, rid ourselves of in the context of the most diverse city in the world, where we welcome and embrace and profess to welcome and embrace and get the best out of everybody. So what I wanted to do tonight, I wanted to speak in particular to you and provide you with an update on the campaign and how it's been going, because it has been going for a week now. And I will tell you that I think it is starting to, punch through, as they would say, with respect to these kinds of campaigns. We've had so far 220,000 impressions on our social media channels, and we need to get that number up. And we want people from the community as a whole, the entire city of Toronto, 3 million people, and frankly, if people from other parts of the country look at it, that's fine too, because they all need the benefit of the awareness raising that is going on through this campaign. What's also of interest to me is that when people are on the website, they're spending more than 4 minutes there. And that doesn't sound like a long time, but I think it is a long time to devote to looking at these messages, because there are a number of messages on the website that are designed to debunk some of these myths and to wipe out some of these stereotypes that are used when it comes to some of our East Asian populations. It means they were looking at the resources that were made available to them on our social media sites. So I think these numbers tell a story. They tell the beginning of a story. The beginning of the story says that more people are interested around the city in learning more about this challenge to us, about this behavior that is so inconsistent with our values as Torontonians. And I think that's a good thing when it comes to the fight against racism. You know, the first thing you have to do, I think, above and beyond anything else, and we've done it with anti-Black racism, with anti-Semitism, with anti-Islamophobic kind of behavior, and I think we have to do it as well, as I've certainly called it out, with anti-Asian racism. You've got to admit that it exists in the city, that it is happening, that it is victimizing people who are innocent people, that are fellow citizens trying to go about their lives. But then the second thing you have to do is get the word out and have other people understand that things they might think that they're saying in a sense of innocence or in a sense of not in any way meaning any harm are things that can be very much taken that way, and that we have to all decide to raise our own individual awareness with ourselves about things we say and do. So we want to see these numbers grow even further and have many, many more people exposed during the balance of this campaign, which is just a first chapter. The initial intensive part of this campaign is going to last for a month. So we have 3 weeks to go, and we want more and more people, whether they're from the Asian communities or from the other parts of the community, to see this campaign, to experience it, and to absorb it. So we can raise awareness about all kinds of racism around our city. In particular, we're focused on East Asian racism, but we are challenged by anti-Black racism, by anti-Semitism, by anti-Asian racism, and all of those things, whether they relate to people's faith or to their race or to their sexual orientation, we have to deal with. We can't stand by and watch it grow into a larger issue, as we've seen happen elsewhere. We need to come together, as Torontonians do. We need to take a stand. I was speaking at an event that was a Holocaust education event yesterday down by the aquarium at the CN Tower. And I said, you've got to stand up, as I try to do as mayor. You've got to stand shoulder to shoulder with the people who are victimized, and you've got to speak up, as I try to do again, and as I need you to do, and you've got to show up. And that means show up at given places, as I did, for example, with Dr. Joseph Wong and with Abby Go and so on, to decry some of the incidents of anti-East Asian racism we were seeing earlier on a couple of months ago. We need to say it loud and clear, and that is what this campaign says. Toronto is a city for all, and we have to make sure we don't just say it, we don't just put it in ad campaigns, but that we live it. And the part of living it is going to increase the awareness of people of what is going on and what the facts are and how they can help us to wipe it out. So we need you to help us to share the campaign with the public so that they can learn more about it and learn more about things they might think of as innocent or harmless that in fact are causing deep pain and hurt to our fellow citizens, our fellow residents here in the city of Toronto. We won't reach the goal of wiping out discrimination and racism and hateful and hurtful commentary in Toronto by just wishing it to be so. We actually have to do something about it. And this campaign, the Toronto for All campaign, as it applies to East Asian racism, is a good first step. The other reason that I would solicit your help in putting out there the word about this campaign and increasing awareness is because I want the East Asian communities in Toronto to know that we're mounting this campaign. Some of them may have seen it, some may not. It's very hard when you're dealing with limited resources to, get everybody's attention. But I would like them to know, as a matter of their own self-confidence, their own self-respect, their own dignity as Torontonians, to know that when we have seen the kind of numbers of incidents that we've experienced in Toronto since the pandemic began, let alone before, we have acted to raise awareness about that and to raise awareness about what people have to do to try and wipe it out. So I would finish with this request. Please help us spread the word about this commitment that your city is making through the Toronto for All campaign to engage people in the fight against racism, East Asian racism or any other kind of racism. But tonight we're talking about East Asian racism, and help us to, as a city, protect and support the East Asian communities that have been victimized by this kind of racism. I hope people will take a look at the website as part of your coverage or just as part of your own awareness raising as a citizen. The URL, the address is at toronto.ca/anti-East racism.to, so that you can learn more about anti-East racism in our city, anti-East Asian racism, and be part of the engaged citizenry, the engaged population of the city of Toronto that's going to work hard to make sure that we wipe it out. So those are my opening comments, and that's why we asked you to come together today, and I thank you very much for coming together, and I thank my staff for their help.
And then lastly, we have Joseph Lau from TorontoTV. Joseph, go ahead.
Okay, hi Mayor. Canada is proud of its diversity, and I know all three levels of government are supporting multiculturalism. But I see that after that so many years of multiculturalism strategy is not working, because, for example, I went to a South Asian community event. The organizer asked me why I'm there to cover their event, who tell me to go. So what I see that right now the situation is a multi-individual culturalism, because each ethnic community, they do grow very well. For example, like Chinese community, they grow in populations, they grow in their culture. But on the other hand, we are not reaching out to other communities. All right. For example, like South Asian didn't come to Chinese event, Chinese didn't go to the Russian event, so that creates the misunderstanding and also misrepresentation. So what I see is that I would suggest all three levels of government, including like City of Toronto, try to think about, say, cross-community, cross-culturalism. That's what we need to do, right? Once we have a understanding of each other community, so that I think there will be less racism. Okay, there will be less understanding. That's my concerns. Thank you.
Well, Joseph, thank you. And I'll just say this. We know that while we're the most diverse city in the world, we know that probably we're seen around the world as an example of how to try and embrace everybody and get the best out of everybody. We know we're not perfect. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons we're having this campaign is because we know there are incidents, hundreds of them, of anti-East Asian racism taking place in our city. And that is, unfortunately, on a list with anti-Black racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and so on. The challenge for us is to, yes, try and bring people together, try and have them understand each other through some of the education programs that take place, but including this kind of education program that says, you know, when you say something, you may not realize how hurtful and how discriminatory that is. And you're right. I think the notion that we could bring together the East Asian communities just even by themselves, because there's more than one, it's not just Chinese, or the notion we could bring East Asian communities together with African Canadian communities and talk about the common experience of experiencing racism in Toronto, I think that's going to be very healthy, and we should do more of that. But I don't share your view that Toronto is heading downhill or that is heading to a position that is still not a model for the rest of the world. We have to keep working at it. And that's what this campaign is about. That's why I'm talking to you tonight, because we have to keep working at it day after day. When this campaign is over, we have to decide what's the next one going to be to combat racism. Racism is something that is, unfortunately and tragically, a part of the human condition almost anywhere you go. But the key to success in dealing with it is if you fight back and push back and educate back and bring people together and have them get to know each other and have them understand we're not going to put up with it, that it's going to be something we utterly and completely reject. And so that's what this is about. That's why I'm here tonight, because I want people to know that as the mayor, I completely, 100% reject this kind of behavior, that I'll do everything in my power to make sure we have campaigns, that we have all different manner of awareness raising and making sure that people are in compliance with the applicable laws, because we cannot allow a city that is seen as a model, although imperfect by the rest of the world, is seen as a model, to degenerate into something that is going to leave us very, very sorry in a very short period of time. Sorry both for the fact that our fellow citizens were abused and treated abusively, but sorry for the fact that something the world admires we let slip away out of our hands by not pushing back when we see this kind of racism take place. So, Joseph, I'm more of an optimistic about Toronto than perhaps you are. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's why I'm here, because I'm going to push back on this. I'm going to push back every time I see it. You'll see me standing up and making a public statement saying that is not acceptable, that is not a part of who we are in this city, and it's not a part of what we're going to be going forward.
Okay. And one more.
Do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I do. Just tell you a reality. I'm as a Chinese Canadian. It's very difficult for me to identify who is Chinese Canadian, who is Korean Canadian, or Japanese Canadian. I think when we look at the anti-racism, sometimes we look more in depth, like about the culturism. All right, help each community members, they know, try to understand each other, try to like understand who is Asian. East Asian include many countries. All right, so as from the outlook, from what dressing, you can tell which one. That's my concern. Thank you.
Well, look, I can understand that as a challenge with many nationalities in Toronto and so on, and people try to guess at these things and then end up sometimes stereotyping.
Yeah.
But what I would say to you is this, that all of the education programs, and when we have these Asian Heritage Month, and we have, Holocaust Education Week, and we have, Tamil Heritage Month, and so on, all of these in their own way, whether it's a nationality or a faith or a cultural group, are designed to educate people about each other. And it's not so much so they can recognize each other as being Korean or Japanese or Chinese. It is so that they can understand each other better, and understand their roots and understand their values to the extent they're any different. I tend to think most human beings have the same values, but it's so important that we have these educational exercises. And I thought the very first question that I got about trying to introduce a degree of education in the schools was excellent, because we will only get to know about each other. Human nature is that you tend to hang around with and do things with people that are like you. Okay. And what we have to do is break out of that mold in the city of Toronto. We've done a pretty good job of it. We have to do better at breaking out of the mold of being with people that are like you all the time, and consciously be with people who are not like you, and learn about them, and learn about stereotypes you had in your own head about them, and learn about things they're contributing to Toronto and making it a better city. So I'm taking that on board. It was the first question tonight. I think it was a very excellent question. What can we do in the school system and beyond campaigns like this to say to people, racism has no place. Discrimination and stereotyping have no place. We are instead going to make our efforts in the school system and outside of the school system to get people to know more about each other, to learn about each other, to celebrate the differences we have from one another. And I think that's something Torontonians are very interested in. I think this campaign will help.